Thanks for joining, everyone. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully, then more people can join us as we go. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone, as I said before. And I want to welcome everyone to our webinar. So this is about this FinTech and UX design best practices. So let's get started. I want to start off by letting you know that we're going to be recording this session. Also, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We'll be sure to answer those at the end of the session. If we can make it, work it into the session and it's relevant to the question, we can try to address it then. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Beverly Shanahan. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Theorem, and I'll be your host today. And our webinar will cover several aspects of FinTech UX design best practices. And this is actually just a part of our FinTech webinar series. So be sure to keep an eye out for the future some future sessions on that as well. Our speaker today is Suhela Kapoor. We're so excited to have her here. Chief Experience Officer at Theorem. Suhela brings over a decade of experience in UI UX and is used to working with fast-paced digital agencies and large corporations. She has experience designing FinTech products with more than 1 million users. So welcome, Suhela.
Hey, thanks, Beverly.
Thank you. We'll get started with some questions here. Could you just start off by defining FinTech and sharing a few of the different types of FinTech businesses and apps?
Yeah, so I'll start with what FinTech is. So FinTech is actually a blend of financial and technology. So it refers to any app, software, or platform that allows people or businesses to digitally access, manage, or gain insights into their finances or make financial transactions. So over the last decade, as users have adopted to digital tools, FinTech rose as a means to help users address financial challenges and make progress towards financial goals. So in turn, users have come to rely on FinTech for a range of uses, from banking and budgeting to investments and lending, as well as for its tangible everyday benefits. So also over the past few years, there has been also a significant raise of capital in FinTech companies. So when it comes to types of FinTech, there are different types of FinTech that are out there. They range from platforms across B2B, B2C, as well as P2P. So there are 6 main types. So those are banking, cashless payments, personal financial management, wealth, lending, and embedded finance.
Okay, perfect. Good start. What does friction versus frictionless mean in terms of FinTech design, and why is it so important?
Firstly, Beverly, I would like to define what friction and frictionless design and UX means to the audience out here. So let's start with frictionless. Frictionless design actually produces experiences that answer a user's wants and needs as quickly and seamlessly as possible. The frictionless is perhaps best defined within Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think, which highlights usability best practices. Steve Krug's most dominant principle of usability is don't make me think. So he argues that an experience should require minimal cognitive effort from users. So this means a truly frictionless experience that should take little to no thought to understand. So efficient frictionless experience should enable users to complete tasks as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So from our past experience, actually, one of the challenges while we were designing a FinTech app for our client was to know your customers. So filling out forms for KYC is actually a very boring and stressful process. So to reduce the stress, there are third-party integration like Plate that actually helps reduce friction between the users and the platform to create a safe and reliable process so users can connect their financial data to the apps and services. So when it comes to friction, friction is defined as interactions that inhibit people from easy and painlessly achieving their goals within digital interface. So this may include modals or pop-ups which interrupt the user's journey and slow their progress. Friction actually acts as a wedge between the users and the product. So as a result, eliminating the friction has become a focus of tech industry, creating a culture of optimization and giving rise to principle of frictionless design. However, there is something called positive or meaningful friction, which is actually very important in fintech. So it's kind of a friction when used carefully and intentionally can be helpful product feature. It actually allows fintechs to build trust with their users and prevent them from making costly mistakes. So rather than thinking friction as a strictly harmful, it's helpful to actually distinguish between positive and negative friction. Whereas negative friction is anything but slows down your customers without offering a benefit of doubt in return, such as page with sluggish loading or lengthy and confusing checkout process. These things provide no value to the customers. So whereas positive friction or meaningless friction in any measure that offers resistance against scammers by presenting an extra but reasonable step, like asking for card verification value, which is CVV code at a checkout, helps prevent fraudsters from completing the scam. So purposely well-placed friction keeps the product healthy and customer safe. So it's also noted that most active users actually tolerate positive friction. Merchants who actually utilize positive frictions indicate to their customers that fraud protection and security is actually their priority, which helps actually foster a relationship of trust and safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually had a question from Vikas, but he's asking, are there cases where one would knowingly create friction in the design, and does friction help in any way? I think we kind of addressed that here by saying there is cases where positive friction is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hope that answered your question, Vikas. All right. So when it comes to copy and language, what are some of the best UX practices for financial institutions?
That's actually a very interesting question, Beverly. When you actually think of fintech products, written language is the least of the thing that comes into your mind. Other topics like security, ease of use, accessibility, and scalability is something more important in fintech world. But after all, finance is all about money and numbers, not about words or technical jargon. So even though this is probably true, written language is still plays an important role in fintech product development. So without a writer involved in content development process, you may end up with financial jargon that is unclear, with clunky onboarding that causes customer churn, and even misleading messaging that results in lawsuits or brand damage. For example, Robinhood was fined in 2021 for $70 million for providing users with wrong or misleading information. So there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. You should always check for consistency of language, terminologies throughout the screens. Also refer to few tone of voice guidelines that are actually set out by fintech or financial institutions. Have a financial expert list out all the terms and definitions that will be used by the fintech platforms and can be utilized as a plain language to the advantage by choosing a copy that would be understandable to the users at the first glance. The next thing is to keep copy clear so that it's easy to be read by the normal people. And obviously, there are some terminologies like overdraft or dilution that cannot be put in simpler terms. So it's good to have a dedicated glossary or a helper text for the users to have access to the definitions whenever they need to. Investing in UX writing actually pays off in the long run by helping in creating brand, customer loyalty, competitive edge, and crisis prevention.
Perfect. Okay. And I'm sure, as always, with any app, really, it's important to optimize for mobile. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, Beverly. It's really important to optimize for mobile these days, as mobile has been playing a very important aspect in today's world. Many users have actually become mobile first. So many financial firms offer compelling mobile experiences. Developing high quality in-app user experience means finance companies can get customers more engaged with their finances. A financial app is a part of larger ecosystem that includes banks and other fintech platforms. Customers who have switched from traditional banking to mobile banking apps, as they are easy to use for everyday basic banking activities. According to Statista, 90% of the users actually use mobile banking apps to check their balances, view recent transactions, pay bills, and make transfers. As more people prefer mobile banking, there has been a change in users' expectations. So users expect convenience, security, and added features that help improve their financial health. So what actually mobile apps can help is provide better security, easy bill payments, cashless transactions, 24/7 banking access, mobile wallet, trading and investment, as well as better customer experience, as they will be focusing more on specific, as the app focuses more on specific audience.
Okay, great. And what are some of your recommendations for establishing an optimal mobile onboarding flow?
So first, actually, we need to understand what is mobile onboarding flow is. So mobile onboarding flow is a sequence of steps that new users take when they open the product. An example of the flow includes welcome page, 2 to 3 informational screens, and a login and a sign up page. So so the best practices that we should keep in mind when we are creating mobile onboarding flow is to simplify the sign up process as easy as possible. We need to also introduce the app's value, but it needs to be kept brief and up to the point. Don't try to say everything at once. Otherwise, the user is going to get confused. Offer users the option to skip. Then show the users their progress while they're onboarding, especially if the information required is large. Use animation only if they have a function. Don't overdo the animations since it tends to become very distracting. Ask for permissions only if you really need it, and always reveal why, and keep it accessible so users can revisit it anytime later.
Okay, great. And so what are some ways that UX can make tedious or boring tasks like filling forms effortless?
So in fintech world, forms are actually a very integral part of the product. The design of the form impacts the product's overall user experience, which in turn directly impacts the user. So a well-designed form shows users that the brand is helpful, thoughtful, professional, and tech savvy. So the best UX solution for any given form depends on many factors, like the length of the form, the context of use, the data being collected. So make sure to follow the UI UX recommendations. But if you stray from these established practices, make sure that you have a good reason to do so. So there are a few design recommendations that we should always keep in mind while we are designing a long, tedious, and boring form is to keep it short, eliminate unnecessary fields required. So it will help if you remove the extra fields, it would definitely keep it simple and short. If you want to collect any other information, it can be always derived from any other way, collected more in a conveniently later date, or just simply remove it. Second, always visually group related labels and fields together. So if the form asks for 2 different topics, section it into 2 separate groups of fields. Present the field in a single column layout. It's better to have like a single column rather than having 2 or 3 columns. It's easy for the user to get distracted when the user is moving from one column to another. So it's best to have it in a single format. Always use logical sequencing. So like stick to standard sequences both for the fields. For example, if you're entering a credit card information, so make sure you have the credit card number, then the expiration date, then the security code. And but for the field values, also consider usage frequency and list the most common fields first when possible. Also, match fields to the type and size of the input field. So avoid drop downs when there are only 2 or 3 options that could be actually displayed by just using radio buttons. Also distinguish between optional and required fields. And the last thing is to provide highly visible and specific error messages. Don't just solely depend on the color. Make sure that there's like outline or using a heavier font to ensure that the user doesn't overlook this critical information.
Okay, understood. Yeah, and So how important is data visualization and dashboards then in fintech design? I'm imagining that that's quite important.
Yeah, it's actually pretty important, Beverly, in fintech apps because it allows users to view the data in graphically meaningful way in one of the most important things of that fintech offers. So it allows them to have a better understanding of the earnings, expenses, and relationships between them. So the more progressive products on the market that are out there, they actually use machine learning algorithms that users can access, and with the predictive visualization that can help them take the right decisions. So financial services also provide the need to adapt to the speed at which fintech industry is moving. So this means embracing data visualization and dashboard technologies. So to stay competitive, it's vital for that the dashboards are created with efficiency and the users' needs are actually met. There are few things that we need to keep in mind is that to always know your users. So helping by creating user personas, customer journey maps, it will help what the user is asking for and what data they actually want to see. Telling a story with the right data. So the prioritization of data plays an essential role in the success of the dashboard. So which data is essential and which is secondary. So choosing the right metrics is crucial as well. So effective metrics should be actionable, transparent, and have shared interpretation across the platform. So keeping what matters most should be always highlighted. Always choose the right visuals. By selecting the right way of highlighting your data and creating a visual hierarchy can prevent the dashboard from looking cluttered, and also making sure that making sure that the right visual is used. For example, if there's a bar graph that is needed and having a pie chart instead of that could always confuse the users. Also define efficient interactions. The effort required when viewing a dashboard's visuals should be minimal. So filters, actions, and other interactions should align logically with the end workflow.
Okay, great. Another term we hear a lot thrown around in fintech is gamification. So how does that kind of play a role in user engagement, and how does that benefit them?
So gamification is something that I've seen quite a bit of rise in fintech. So what gamification in fintech means is incorporating game elements and mechanics into a non-game solution to improve customer engagement. In fact, the process generally includes setting objectives, monitoring progress, and completing tasks to unlock rewards such as bonuses, cash incentives, and gifts. So gamification finance apps are often based on PLB, which is points, leaderboards, and badges system to stimulate users to perform certain actions. For example, save money and plan budgets. Actually, gamification also helps attract users to an app and keeps them engaged in it for a longer period of time. This is a huge benefit if you want to make the financial service more appealing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so another thing, personalization is always a key topic in these areas. So does that play a significant role with fintech as well?
Yes, personalization actually plays a very significant role these days, because today's customers are looking for valuable insights and advice from their banks. However, it is difficult to give good financial advice when you don't know the customer's goals and priorities. So something many banks don't have the capacity to offer. So personalization in banking can actually enable a number of benefits that includes increase in engagement and conversion rates, improve customer loyalty and retention, consistent messaging across channel, and stronger marketing ROI. There are multiple types of personalization that are out there, but the three main types are prescriptive personalization, which is the main goal of this type of personalization is to anticipate a customer's wants and needs based on historical data. Real-time personalization, which relies on current real-time data as well as historical data to create a personalized customer experience. And then there's machine learning personalization. This makes use of intelligent machine learning algorithms. So when you're doing the user research for fintech products and you're looking looking into user personas and customer journeys, you'll be able to understand what kind of personalization that needs to be used in the fintech app.
Okay. And how does having, we're talking about UX, but also UI is the other side of things. So how does having a good UI impact fintech design?
Yeah, so UX is something, if it's a good UX, people don't tend to notice it. But if it's a good UI, that is something that users notice first thing. So especially in the age of social media, people are more exposed to visual content than ever before. So the apps needs to be compelling. So if for whatever reason their screen doesn't catch the attention in the first couple of seconds, they will scroll down and forget about it in the next second. So visuals are actually very important. So, but if users really can't figure out the app, you can forget about growing the audience. So the few things that you need to keep in mind while designing for UI, designing the UI for fintech is to make sure the interfaces is personalized. Then visualizing data helps user digest and understand the information quicker. So the designers can also use colors to separate figures like income versus outgoings. And use vibrant colors. This is the latest trend that is going on. As vibrant colors increases the beauty of the resource. They also influence the mood of the users, form a unique, positive, and therefore attractive atmosphere, and form a strong association with brand, product, or services. Then the fourth thing is use gamification to keep the users engaged. And then use blurry, colorful background. So the reason to use blurry, colorful background is that if you have a blur in the background, it brings focus to the foreground where the object or text is. So they become more noticeable in the eyes of the users and are better remembered in all details. The blurry picture is universal, so it can be used as the basis for the visual design of the interface as well as corporate identity for the brand that can be built using it. Blur actually also works with almost any content. So it can be photo, image, video, text, and animation. So the main thing is to take in account is the rules of contrast and color combinations. Also use the appropriate keypad. So when you're completing a form on mobile device mobile devices which requires switch between numbers, letters, special characters, fintech forms are typically longer than other digital products with more fields for users to complete. So designers need to streamline this process by telling mobile devices which keypad to use. But that includes number first keypad, date picker, or email field, and ensure that @ or .com appear as default. Simple navigation is definitely needed, so users don't spend time in finding what they're looking for, and always make sure that the UI relates to the brand identity.
Okay, great. And finally, so what is one area that's often overlooked in fintech and UX design?
There are actually quite a few things that tend to be overlooked. It basically depends on client to client and also depends on the budget. But the few things that is definitely overlooked is not doing the user research. User research provides an essential foundation for the app's entire UX strategy. So it's best to do it as initially as possible. Otherwise, the clients tend to redo the entire design altogether from scratch. The second thing is UI design. So a lot of apps have inconsistent designs. That means inconsistent color schemes, typography, different icons and buttons. So that will complicate a lot of things for the users. It lacks simplicity, and we also lacks right visual cues. The next thing is not considering accessibility for apps UX. Accessibility is a crucial component of fintech app, as UX, as finances are somewhat limiting subject for some people. So many users with cognitive, physical, or other types of disability, whether permanent or temporary, need to be considered. Things like high color contrast needs to be kept in mind for people with visual problems. Don't use just colors for critical information, especially because people with visual impairment would not be able to understand. So to avoid that confusion, always use heavy text or sounds or any other small animations just to make sure that people are able to view it. Make sure text-to-speech functionality is added wherever possible. Make sure to enable zooming options so users can enlarge and reduce text, and ensure that clickable and swipeable area sizes aren't that too large or too small to accommodate users with prominent or small-sized fingers. And the last thing is the lack of onboarding optimization. So the first impression is always critical. Failing to emphasize apps' value proposition can be over or underwhelm the users. So one of the most important things to consider when designing your app's onboarding process is to build trust. So in fintech apps and all financial matters, trust is the stepping stone to successful relationships with customers. So your onboarding process must provide a space for building trust.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much. We do have some time and we have a couple questions here. So let's go ahead and do a Q&A session. If anyone else has any more questions to add, this would be the time to do it. I'm just going to go through a couple that we got earlier. So there's a question from Salo. They said, what about CEOs that don't like adding positive friction because that they may harm conversion? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I think the thing is that, sorry, could you repeat that question?
They said, what about CEOs that don't like adding positive friction because they may harm conversion? So they're worried about, the positive friction affecting their conversions.
Yeah, so positive friction is definitely required. I know some of the CEOs don't view them as positive frictions, but we need to definitely explain it to them that these are required because that has definitely happened with one of our clients where we actually had to add one of the places, the positive friction, but we were not able to add because the CEO was having a little issue in adding it. And at the end, there was a lot of issues and customer were getting a little frustrated because it was not in the right way it was designed. So it is definitely needed. And we have to just explain that to the CEO.
Yeah, okay, understood. We have another question from Vikas. He says 90% mobile, 10% desktop. It's quite a decent gap. Is there any reason why users are using more mobile more than desktop? And he said, is this limited to fintech only?
So basically, it's not just to fintech; it's actually in quite other areas as well, especially in healthcare and nonprofit organization. It's just that phone is something, mobile is something which is always in your hand. It is accessible from anywhere rather than desktop. So people are getting more comfortable with mobile.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, another one from Annie is how do you manage some interactions while designing an app for left-handed users?
That's actually a very good question. So when it comes to interaction, we just definitely need to make sure we have to incorporate left-handed users. One of the reasons is that, especially with the screens that are becoming so big, so it needs to be accessible. So we definitely need to make sure that the interactions are considered for left-handed users as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so another one from Jorge or George. Should visualizations for monitoring progress gear towards a more simplistic view or detail-oriented?
That's actually a very good question. What I have noticed in my experience is that a simplistic view has always worked, but there are some places that detail-oriented view needs to be showcased. So what we usually do is give the option to the users to showcase the simplistic view. But if the user wants to see a more detail-oriented view, we definitely give an option to them to see that.
Okay. And he actually added another question. In addition, do you believe in glass morphism? UI? Do you believe in glass morphism UI? I'm not too familiar with that term. Is a design direction suitable for fintech? Do you know?
Yeah, so that is actually it looks good. Glass morphism definitely looks good. But when it comes to accessibility, it is not a good thing to have. It tends to confuse the users a bit more. I did one of the usability testing for one of the fintech clients. The users were not happy with that.
Oh no. Okay. Goodness, there's so much to learn in this area. I'm still learning so much. All right. Zoe says, how do you deal with and guarantee the quality of a project if the client is not inclined to do user research and market research?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because that has happened initially, is that people don't tend to do user research. So basically, you just have to go with the experience that you have. And also on the side, just do a little bit of competitor research, see the latest UX and UI trends that are going on in the fintech world, just to understand what the users' needs and wants are. That would definitely help in creating the right product. But what I have seen is that even though after that, you tend to have the wrong product, but it's something at the end, they tend to get back to the user research. That has been my experience, but it's just that you need to follow your intuitiveness to create the right product.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay. Well, that's it for questions. Unless anyone else has any questions, feel free to answer or ask them right now. And other than that, we'll be doing a little bit of conclusion here. So thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate your attention and your time here. And we'll be sharing an on-demand version of this webinar with all the attendees. So watch out for that. And then please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions or project inquiries, fintech or otherwise. And everyone should have a great afternoon. And thank you again.
Thanks, Beverly.